Hey guys, what's up? My name is Zach, and today I'll be doing an election prediction between Pete Buttigieg and Donald Trump. So I made this exact prediction 8 months ago, before Pete Buttigieg was an official candidate in the 2020 election, and before he was relatively well known throughout the United States. And it got a few hundred views. I didn't really think it'd go very far after that, but a few weeks ago, despite the fact that this video was made almost a year ago, it's been blowing up. It's now one of my most popular videos, all in the span of just 2 weeks. And a number of those people have been requesting for an updated video, because it's been a long time since I made that last prediction video, and a number of things have changed. Obviously, Pete Buttigieg is now far much more well known throughout the United States. His standing in the race and his ability to win the nomination has also changed. So I'm going to be talking about that in this video as well. And overall, this video is just going to be a response to the people who have been requesting who have been requesting for an updated video, which I do believe is warranted. I agree that a number of things have changed, and I believe that an updated video is absolutely appropriate. So overall, I do believe that Pete Buttigieg's standing in the race has changed drastically. He's now leading in third place in 3 different primary states, behind Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. However, his fundraising still isn't all that great. I still consider him to be at the bottom of the pack amongst the other 2020 candidates like Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders. And that's going to be a struggle for him ahead. He's still very much an underdog in this race, but I think that's part of his appeal, is that he is an underdog amongst the other candidates. So overall, I do believe that Pete Buttigieg would be a very decent candidate against Trump. I stand by the what I said in my last video, that I don't believe that he would be very good against Trump in debates, because Pete Buttigieg is a nice guy. I mean, that's part of his appeal. He's a nice person. He's very formal. He's very well spoken, and I don't believe that someone like that will be able to debate Trump very well. I just don't. That's kind of the method that Hillary Clinton had when she debated Trump, and she did not do very well in those debates as a result of that, because she refused to get down in the mud with Trump and go after him. I don't believe that Pete Buttigieg is capable of that, and I think that debating Trump will be a big obstacle for him if he does get the nomination. However, a big part of his appeal is his appeal to millennial voters. I do believe that's absolutely what's been getting him so far. I'm pretty sure he has one of the highest appeals amongst millennials out of any of the Democratic candidates, which is a big deal. Also, his use of religion as a Democratic candidate, and going after Mike Pence for using religion to go after LGBTQ rights. That's also been a major characteristic of his campaign in the past few weeks. I think it's been working for him. So yes, I do believe that he'd be a decent candidate if nominated, but I don't believe that he'll be getting the nomination. So going over to likely states, I would consider Colorado and New Hampshire to be likely in Pete Buttigieg's column, just given the fact that these 2 states are already pretty solid in the Democrats' columns in general. It's going to be very hard for Trump to have any fighting chance in either one of these states. New Hampshire, I think, is likely for some candidates against Trump, but Pete Buttigieg, I think, is very capable of holding on to Colorado and New Hampshire. His military background will also be very useful to him, and I do believe that Pete Buttigieg would handedly hold on to Colorado and New Hampshire for those reasons. Also Indiana, I'm going to address that as well, even though it's filled in solid, because it is Pete Buttigieg's home state. Although I do believe that home state advantage will apply to Pete Buttigieg, I don't believe that that'll push this state any more out of solid red. I think that if Pete Buttigieg was maybe or any candidate, I think that home state advantage really only applies when you're the governor or the lieutenant governor or the attorney general or some statewide official. I think that's when it would apply. But Pete Buttigieg is the mayor of a single city in Indiana, so I don't believe that home state advantage will apply tremendously for him, because he's really only. I think that'll only apply to that one area of Indiana. I do think that it'll do better here than other Democratic candidates, but I don't think it's. I would not say that there's a decent chance of him winning Indiana in the 2020 election, just given the current political makeup of the state. Mains to electoral votes I would consider to be likely in Pete Buttigieg's column for the same reason as New Hampshire. I think it's going to be hard for any Democrat to lose these 2 electoral votes, and I think that Pete Buttigieg absolutely has the support to win that area or the state at large. His charisma and his speaking ability will absolutely do very well for him. I've seen his speeches, and they're very good. I personally like him, just for his speaking ability. I think that he's very well spoken, very charismatic, and he's very likable. That's part of the reason why his approval is high in general. He has a very likable personality. He's very charismatic, and he has a good background as well. So those factors would absolutely do well for him in a state like Maine. Texas and Georgia, however, I would not consider to be. I do not think that Pete Buttigieg would have a good chance at winning these 2 states. Although I think that millennial support, especially amongst young millennial Democratic voters, getting them to turn out in these 2 states will benefit him a lot. I think that in order to win these 2 states as a Democrat, you need to have that centrist appeal, that more moderate appeal, and the name recognition as well. I don't think that Pete Buttigieg has a name recognition. He's really just become well known as a result of 2020. You'll need to have either home state advantage like Beto O'Rourke does, or to be like a well-known politician throughout the United States like Joe Biden in order to win in Texas or Georgia. And Pete Buttigieg absolutely does not have that going for him. Nevada, I would consider to be likely in Pete Buttigieg's column, although Hispanic appeal, I don't think applies to Pete Buttigieg at all. I think that millennial appeal will go very far in Nevada, especially when it comes to getting Democrats to turn out. And as we saw in the 2018 midterms, I mean, we saw a Trump-supporting Republican senator lose by a margin of 5 points, despite the fact that he was an incumbent. And I think that in a national election, when there's going to be higher turnout, and when there's not going to be that same kind of incumbent advantage, or at least not in a statewide sense. Obviously, Trump is the incumbent. I believe that Pete Buttigieg and most Democrats will be able to secure Nevada come 2020. As for Minnesota, I would consider that to be likely in Pete Buttigieg's column as well. For the same logic as Nevada, I mean, it's another state that went to Hillary Clinton narrowly in 2016. Despite the fact that was a very bad year for Democrats, it still went to Hillary Clinton. And I believe that in a nationwide race, Minnesota would probably support Pete Buttigieg over Trump. And also I think that the fact that he is from Indiana and he is from the Rust Belt area will benefit him here. I think that his millennial appeal will do very well in the urban areas, along with the rural areas as well. I think that appeal goes hand in hand with rural and urban, and I do believe that he will hold on to Minnesota. Michigan as well, I will call likely in Pete Buttigieg's column, for the same reasons as Minnesota virtually. I mean, he's from the area. South Bend is very close to Michigan. I think that he will be able to appeal to those urban millennial voters, which I think will do very well for him. His background in the military will also support him in a state like Michigan, especially against Trump. Again, I think that his ability to debate Trump will be an obstacle for him, especially when it comes to the Rust Belt. But I do believe that they would put their support behind Pete Buttigieg over Trump, just in general. Moving over to leaning states, I would consider Iowa to be leaning in Trump's column, although I do believe that Pete Buttigieg has a decent amount of Midwestern appeal, a decent amount of appeal to the farming vote in this state as a result of being from Indiana and being a small town, a small city mayor. I think that's a big factor in why this state is leaning and not likely in Trump's column. Same with the rest of the Rust Belt. I think that his the fact that he is a newcomer and the fact that he is a bit of an outsider as well will support him in states like Minnesota and Michigan, and Iowa as well. I think that he would do well in Iowa as a result of that. But Trump, however, does have a very solid base of support in Iowa. We saw that in the midterms during the governor's elections. I don't believe that Pete Buttigieg will be able to work past that very strong farming appeal for Trump. I think he'll be able to make it competitive to some degree as a result of the leaning column in going to Trump. Moving over to Pennsylvania, I would consider Pennsylvania to be leaning in Pete Buttigieg's column. again, we've seen the state trend more and more to the Democrats. I think that it is currently Democratic favored for 2020. I think that Pete Buttigieg would absolutely have very good turnout in the urban areas. I think that'd be the bedrock of his support in Pennsylvania, and I think it'd be difficult for him to run in the more rural areas as it would for any Democrat. But I think that he would be able to secure Pennsylvania as a whole come 2020 as a result of those factors. Going down to North Carolina, I would call North Carolina leaning in Trump's column. I don't think that Pete Buttigieg has a tremendous amount of Southern appeal. I think that millennial appeal will absolutely apply to a state like North Carolina, especially among the suburban, affluent class of voters that are here. And I think that will allow him to definitely make this state competitive. But North Carolina still has a very distinct Southern identity, and I think that it would go to Trump by a slim margin. I think that the city turnout would be what makes this state so competitive when it comes to Buttigieg versus Trump. But I do believe that it would still go to Trump in this prediction. Now going over to Wisconsin, I think that the clash between the urban areas and the farming vote and the more rural vote in the state will make this a pretty competitive state. But I feel confident in calling it leaning in Pete Buttigieg's column, giving him the victory in this prediction. And that really comes down to the fact that for the same reasons I listed for Minnesota and Michigan, I think that his appeal as an outsider, someone who isn't an establishment politician, someone who comes from the region as well, would do very well for him, along with his millennial appeal, along with his military background, and along with his shaking up the entire race with his LGBTQ and religious rhetoric. I think has been very effective for him, and I think it would continue to be very effective for him in a state like Wisconsin and in the Rust Belt in general. Now moving over to the toss-ups, I would consider all 4 of these areas. Oh, I forgot to fill in Nebraska second. I consider all 4 of these or 5 of these areas to be toss-ups, and I'll try to characterize them as best as I can. Florida, I would consider to be tilting in Trump's column. As I said before, I don't believe that Pete Buttigieg has a lot of Southern appeal. I think that he'll be painted as just a northern, just spoiled millennial. And I think that's another thing that would work against him, just Trump painting him as just a young, naive, spoiled millennial would definitely cause him to do badly in states like Texas and throughout the South. But Florida, I do think that he would do very well in the urban areas. Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville, I think he would do very well in. But as we saw in the midterms, this state still is in Trump's column. This state was given a choice between, in both the governor's race and in the Senate race, between a Democrat and two Trump supporting Republicans, and they voted for the Trump supporting Republicans. And this was in 2018, and I think that trend would probably continue into the 2020 election. And I don't think that Pete Buttigieg is the Democratic candidate that will be able to wrestle Florida out of Trump's column. I just don't think he's capable of doing that. Arizona, I think, will be very close. But I would call it in Trump's column. I don't think that Pete Buttigieg is centrist enough or moderate enough to appeal to those more independent voters those more independent Republicans who don't really support Trump all that much. But given the choice between Buttigieg and Trump, I think that they would still vote for Trump. Just because I think that same millennial, spoiled kind of rhetoric that I think that Trump would use against Pete Buttigieg would be a bit of a setback for him in a state like Arizona, and I think that would cause Arizona to slip in the Trump's column. Moving over to Nebraska second, I would call tilting in Trump's column. Although this is an urban area, we saw in the midterms that it did go narrowly to the Republican, and I don't believe that Pete Buttigieg will be able to muster up the enough Midwestern appeal or the name recognition to win in an area like Omaha. Maine second, I believe I meant to fill that in before. I meant to fill that in as leaning. My bad. I meant to fill that in as a leaning in Trump's column because this is a much more rural, much more gun supporting area of Maine compared to the rest of Maine, and I do think that Trump's support amongst those voters is solid, and I don't think that Pete Buttigieg will be able to win in that area, mostly as a result of his lack of name recognition. Now, as for Ohio, this is the most competitive state, I think, out of everywhere, mostly because Pete Buttigieg is from the area, mostly because I think that he will be able to appeal to those urban areas, but Trump still has a very, very strong hold on those more rural, even suburban areas of Ohio, and for that reason, I would list it tilting in Trump's column. I think that Pete Buttigieg's lack of name recognition will be a major setback for him in Ohio, along with the rest of the country as a whole. And I do believe that his youth and Trump's attacks against him will be effective when it comes to wooing Ohio voters. So this is the prediction. I don't think it's all that much different than my prediction that I made last. The only major thing that I think has changed between now and when I made this prediction in the summer is that Pete Buttigieg now has a bit larger possibility of actually winning the nomination. But that still doesn't change how he would perform against Trump. Because you can have a higher chance of winning the nomination but still do not as good against Trump. And I think that's shown here. Because I don't think that Pete Buttigieg is capable of winning the Democratic nomination. And that's not speaking on an opinionated basis. That's just because he doesn't have the money, the name recognition compared to Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. I think that he has a fighting chance, especially after his fundraising, his initial fundraising haul and his underdog status, which has led to heightened approval polls in a number of states. But I don't think that it's enough momentum to carry him to winning the nomination. So overall, in the prediction against Buttigieg versus Trump, I would say that Pete Buttigieg has about like a 75%, 80% chance of winning. I think that Trump's only options against winning against Buttigieg is maybe to wrestle away Wisconsin and maybe Pennsylvania away from him, but I think that's very unlikely. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed the video. For those of you who suggested this video, I hope that I improved upon my commentary, and I hope that it met your criteria, or at least for the constructive criticisms. Like I said before, there was a lot of just unconstructive criticism on that video, but I hope this video was an improvement upon the last prediction. And if you are new to the channel, I urge you to subscribe. It's the only way for small channels like mine to grow, and I'll see you in the next video.